My dad took my brother, my mom took my sister, and I was the one left in state care. Years later, they all showed up wanting to be part of my life again. But I wasn't the same kid they abandoned back then. Can you imagine being 8 years old, watching your family splinter into pieces, and realizing that when they divided up the kids, nobody took you? That moment burned a hole in my soul, an injustice that shaped everything that came next. Because trust me, this isn't just a story about abandonment. It's about building yourself from the ground up when everyone else has walked away. See, for a long time, we were just normal. Picture this. A cozy brick ranch in suburban Chicago, a tire swing hanging from a massive oak, the evening sun filtering through the leaves as my golden retriever, Rusty, chased us kids until we collapsed in giggling heaps. My dad, Jack, was a contractor, all broad shoulders and hands rough from work. He smelled of sawdust and mint gum, a scent that still brings a strange comfort. My mom, Diane, a nurse with this infectious laugh that would shake her whole body. She'd let me brush her dark blonde hair, counting 100 strokes, just like the princesses in my storybooks. Noah, my older brother by 2 years, was my protector. He taught me to ride a bike, cheering me on until I pedaled solo. He was obsessed with baseball cards, reciting stats I barely understood, but loved hearing him explain with such pride. Then there was Sophie, my little sister, just 6. Wispy blonde curls, a stuffed elephant named Ellie, always trailing after me, listening intently as I made up voices for her bedtime stories. Our home wasn't fancy, but it was ours. My bedroom ceiling glowed with stars, the kitchen had mismatched chairs and yellow curtains Mom had sewn herself. Sundays meant pancakes, Dad flipping them, Mom slicing fruit, Noah sneaking in chocolate chips, and Sophie giggling, his little co-conspirator. I'd set the table feeling so grown up. Summers were for Lake Michigan, building sandcastles, Mom reading paperbacks, Dad teaching us to swim past the waves. We'd end those sun-kissed, exhausted nights with ice cream, watching the sky explode in watercolor pinks and purples. My 8th birthday was a dream. Rainbow cake, balloons everywhere, freeze tag in the backyard. Dad even set up a sprinkler for us to run through. Mom, with her old film camera, captured every single moment. I remember feeling so special, so utterly loved. I had no idea it was our last celebration as a whole family. Looking back, there were whispers of trouble, things I was too young to fully grasp. Dad's work became inconsistent. 1 month, plenty, the next, hushed conversations behind closed doors. Mom's smile would tighten when bills arrived. But kids don't see that stuff, not until it's screaming in their faces. Our home felt secure, warm, full of that everyday family magic. Game nights where Dad accused Mom of cheating at Monopoly, dinner where we shared our day's best part, Mom's flowery perfume as she kissed our foreheads before school. These tiny moments were the bedrock of my world. I believed it was as solid as our brick house. I had no idea foundations could crack. That homes built on love could still crumble. I couldn't have imagined a future where we'd all become strangers, or that I would be the one left behind. Those memories are precious, but they hurt. They remind me of everything I lost, and everything I had to rebuild alone. The first real crack happened when Dad lost a huge construction contract. I remember that night. He came home hours late, face gray with defeat. Mom sent us to the basement, but their voices, sharp and raw, carried right down the stairs. How could you have banked everything on this one job, Jack? Mom's voice was accusatory, a sound I'd never heard. It was a sure thing, Diane. How was I supposed to know they'd go with another company? Dad boomed back, defensive. That night, I heard Mom crying in their bedroom, stifled sobs, and Dad slept on the couch. Breakfast the next morning was thick with silent tension. In the weeks that followed, Mom started taking extra nursing shifts, gone before we woke, home after we were in bed. Her absence left a gaping hole. Dad tried to fill it, but he was always distracted on the phone, trying to get new contracts while bills piled up. One night, I got up for water and overheard Dad whispering on the phone, "I don't know how we're going to make the mortgage this month. The savings are gone, and Diane's extra shifts barely cover the utilities." The fear in his voice tied my stomach in knots. Noah retreated, door closed, baseball team quit. I'd catch him looking at his glove, fingers tracing the worn leather. Sophie started having nightmares, screaming about monsters. I'd crawl in beside her, stroking her hair, whispering reassurances I barely believed myself. Our parents were so deep in their own struggles, they didn't see us falling apart. Christmas that year? Forget it. No tree, no presents. Just a small dinner Mom made between shifts where they barely spoke. Noah picked at his food. Sophie kept asking when Santa was coming, questions our parents deflected until she just stopped. In January, my grandparents visited, their voices hushed with concern. They offered help, but my father's pride, still intact despite everything crumbling around us, refused. "We'll figure this out ourselves," he insisted, while my grandmother's face creased with worry. Dad started drinking more. Not every night, but enough that the recycling bin filled up fast. He'd fall asleep on the couch. Mom became emotionally distant, just going through the motions. Mornings became my responsibility. I, an 8-year-old, would get up early, make cereal for Noah and Sophie, brush their teeth, pack their backpacks. I'd walk Sophie to her classroom, promising to meet her after school, taking on a role no child should have to. One afternoon, I came home early and heard Mom on the phone in her bedroom. The door was ajar, and I saw her rubbing her forehead, like she was trying to ward off a headache. "I don't know what our options are, Lisa," she told my aunt. "The kids. I just can't give them the life they deserve like this." Then she said the words that made cold dread wash over me, words that still haunt me. "We've talked about separation, but what happens to the children then? Who goes where?" As if we were furniture to be divided. The fighting escalated. One night, Dad punched a hole in the living room wall. I watched from the stairs, frozen, as Mom screamed he was out of control. Noah pulled me back to our room, where Sophie was already hiding under her blankets. The three of us huddled on my bed, Noah's arm protectively around us both, listening to our family implode. Later that week, I found Mom crying in the bathroom, door not fully closed. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs. I wanted to go to her, to offer the comfort I gave Sophie, but something held me back. Maybe it was the crushing realization that some hurts were too big for a child to fix. I started creating distraction games for my siblings, elaborate forts in the basement, scavenger hunts. Anything to shield them, to give them moments of normal childhood in the chaos. But I couldn't distract myself from the truth. Something irreparable had broken. Dad moved to the basement. Guest room. The separation within our house felt like a chilling prelude. I'd lie awake, listening for reconciliation that never came, imagining a future where we'd be a family again. Then I found them. In Mom's purse. Divorce papers. Custody arrangement. I wasn't snooping, just looking for gum, but there they were. Official documents. I didn't get all the legal jargon, but I understood enough. This wasn't temporary. This was the end. That evening, long after we were supposed to be in bed, I sat at the top of the stairs, listening. My parents, discussing which child would go where. The casual way they divided us up still makes my blood run cold. "Noah should come with me," Dad said. "He needs a male influence." "Fine, but Sophie stays with me," Mom replied. "She's too young to be without her mother." My heart hammered. I waited, breath held, for one of them to mention me. To fight for me. To claim me. But the conversation moved on to financial arrangements and visitation schedules. My name never came up. It was as if I didn't exist. Invisible. That night, I cried silently into my pillow, careful not to wake Sophie. I was facing the first devastating realization of my young life. In the redistribution of our family, there was no place for me. The morning everything changed forever started like any other. I woke early, a habit I developed, and went downstairs to make breakfast. Dad and Noah were in the living room, suitcases packed beside them. Dad was kneeling, hands on Noah's shoulders, speaking in a low, serious voice. "We're going on a trip," Dad explained when he saw me. "Noah and I need some time away." Noah looked confused, his eyes red-rimmed. When he hugged me goodbye, he whispered, "I'll call you soon, I promise," his voice wobbling. I clung to him, knowing this wasn't a normal trip. Dad barely looked at me as they left, just a quick, "Be good for your mom, Goldie," before ushering Noah into the car. I saw garbage bags filled with clothes, not luggage for a trip, but for a move. After they drove away, Mom locked herself in her bedroom. I heard her sobbing, but my knocks went unanswered. Sophie kept asking where Dad and Noah had gone. I had no idea what to tell her. We ate cereal for dinner. I read Sophie 3 extra stories. Mom stayed in her room the next day. I made peanut butter sandwiches. I tried calling Dad's cell again and again. Voicemail. That night, Sophie and I slept in my bed again, her small body curled against mine for comfort we both desperately needed. On the third day, Mom emerged, hollow-eyed but determined. She moved with robotic efficiency, pulling out suitcases, filling them with Sophie's things. When I asked what she was doing, she paused briefly. "Sophie and I need a fresh start," she said, not meeting my eyes. We're going to stay with Aunt Lisa for a while. What about me? I asked, panic rising in my chest. When are we coming back home? Mom's expression flickered, guilt warring with resolve. You'll stay here for now. We'll come back for you when things settle down. I promise. I didn't believe her. I was 8 years old and powerless. Sophie cried when she realized I wasn't coming, reaching for me from Mom's arms as they headed to the car. Why can't Goldie come? She wailed. Goldie needs to stay here in case your father comes back, Mom said, a lie I recognized even then. We'll be together again soon. Then they were gone. And I was alone. In our house. Completely alone. At 8 years old. The first day, I pretended it was an adventure. Ice cream for breakfast, TV shows Mom never allowed, jumping on my parents' bed. But the freedom quickly gave way to fear as darkness fell, and the house made strange noises. I slept with all the lights on that night, Rusty curled protectively at my feet. The next morning, I realized no one had fed him, so I poured an entire box of cereal into his bowl. By the third day alone, food was dire. I'd exhausted the easy options. The milk was sour. I didn't know how to use the stove. Rusty and I shared crackers and cheese. I kept calling Dad's phone and now Mom's, but neither answered. I left tearful messages, begging them to come back. The silence was deafening. On the fourth day, there was a knock. Mrs. Garcia, our next-door neighbor, stood there, concerned. She'd noticed I was alone. I lied, Mom's at the store. But Mrs. Garcia saw through it, especially when Rusty bounded up, clearly unfed and unwalked. Where are your parents, sweetie? She asked gently. And then I broke down, telling her everything through gulping sobs. How Dad took Noah, Mom took Sophie, and nobody took me. How they promised to come back, but never called. How I was running out of food and was so scared. Mrs. Garcia's face transformed from concern to horror. She brought me to her house, fed me a real meal, and called the authorities. That evening, a social worker, Ms. Reynolds, sat across from me, asking questions I couldn't answer. Do you know where your parents went? Do you have grandparents? How long have you been alone? 4 days. Ms. Reynolds had a soft voice, but I couldn't miss the pity in her eyes. That pity became a familiar expression on the faces of adults for years to come. She explained I couldn't stay in the empty house. They'd try to contact my parents. I packed a small bag, taking my stuffed bear, Howard. Another loss. A week later, the family court hearing was cold, sterile. Adults talked about me as if I weren't there. Neither of my parents appeared, though they'd been notified. The judge, an older man with kind eyes but a stern mouth, declared me a ward of the state. Just like that, in less than 2 weeks, I went from being part of a family to being a case number in the foster care system. My first placement was with the Thompsons. They had 3 kids of their own and took in foster kids for the money. Not cruel, but not kind either. I slept on a pull-out couch in their basement. My few belongings were kept in a black garbage bag because there was no dresser for me. Their children looked at me with suspicion, never including me. I wrote letters to Noah and Sophie, pouring out my heart, addressing them to Aunt Lisa's. Weeks later, they came back, marked return to sender, no forwarding address. I called Dad's cell once, when Mrs. Thompson wasn't looking. A sharp female voice answered, annoyed when I asked for my father. He can't come to the phone. Who is this? It's Goldie, his daughter. Hope surged through me. There was a pause. I'll tell him you called, she said, and the line went dead. He never called back. I left messages at Aunt Lisa's too. Their responses were vague. Your mom is going through a lot right now, or they'll reach out when they're ready. Never a direct connection. Never answers. Gradually, I learned both my parents had moved out of state. Dad took Noah to Wisconsin, Mom and Sophie to Indiana with Aunt Lisa. Neither left contact information with the foster agency. Neither attended my custody hearings. Neither seemed to care. 6 months into the Thompsons, a birthday card from Noah arrived, weeks late, forwarded multiple times. Inside, a store-bought card, Happy Birthday, Goldie. Miss you, Noah. No return address, no number. Just proof he was alive and remembered. I slept with that card under my pillow until it fell apart. Mrs. Thompson found me crying over the tattered remains one night. She sat awkwardly, patting my back. Sometimes families just can't stay together, she said. But you're safe here, and that's what matters. But I wasn't safe. A month later, the Thompsons decided they wanted to focus on their biological children. Just like that, I was packing my garbage bag again. My second placement was with the Ramirez family. 5 other foster kids crammed into a 3-bedroom house. Mr. Ramirez was militaristically strict. Mrs. Ramirez was indifferent. I shared a bunk bed with two other girls, my space a third of a dresser and a plastic bin under the bed. That's where I kept Noah's card, now taped between clear packing tape. New school, new kids. I was the foster kid, the one with secondhand clothes and no parents at school functions. I became quiet, burying myself in schoolwork. Teachers ignored me. Other students lost interest when I wouldn't share details of my broken life. One older foster boy, Damon, stole the bracelet Mrs. Garcia had given me. When I confronted him, he threatened to tell the Ramirezes I'd broken house rules if I reported him. I learned a harsh lesson. Sometimes, you have to choose which losses you can live with. Social workers came and went, each knowing less about my case than the last. They'd read from a file, asking standard questions about my well-being. I learned to say what they wanted to hear. During one visit, a rushed social worker casually mentioned an update. Noah was playing baseball in Wisconsin, doing well. Sophie was in Indiana, taking dance classes. They were thriving. I was just surviving. The contrast was a bitter pill. After 8 months, I was moved again to the Williams family. On the surface, they seemed perfect. Tidy suburban home, Mrs. Williams baking cookies, Mr. Williams coaching Little League. I even got my own room. I dared to hope. But appearances deceive. Mrs. Williams's warm persona disappeared behind closed doors, replaced by cutting remarks and impossible standards. Nothing I did was good enough. My grades, my chores, my appearance. You're so lazy. No wonder your parents didn't want you, she'd say, smiling at Mr. Williams. Or, if you were my real daughter, I'd be embarrassed to take you anywhere while driving me to school. The verbal abuse was constant but careful, never enough to trigger a report. I learned to be invisible. Insomnia became my constant companion. My school performance suffered, giving her more ammunition. After a year, I was moved to my worst placement, the Jacksons. Mr. Jackson was rarely home. Mrs. Jackson collected foster checks, spending the money on herself while keeping us on strict food rations. Meals were monitored, snacks forbidden, food withheld as punishment. At 14, hungry and desperate, I ran away. 3 days living in a park, sleeping on benches, stealing food, until the police found me. The Jacksons didn't want me back. It was during this transition that my high school counselor, Miss Rivera, saw something in me I'd long stopped seeing: potential. Despite my spotty attendance, my standardized test scores were exceptional. "You're smart, Goldie," she told me. "Really smart. And that brain of yours is your ticket out." My new placement was with Miss Harriet, an older single woman who'd fostered dozens of teenagers. She wasn't overly affectionate or cold. She offered clear boundaries, consistent expectations. Her house was modest, but comfortable, bookshelves lining every wall. "I don't expect you to call me Mom," she said on my first night. "I'm not trying to replace anyone. But while you're here, you'll have stability, respect, and opportunities. What you make of them is up to you." For the first time in years, I experienced genuine stability. Dinner at 6, homework until 8, reading time, lights out. She checked my assignments, not to criticize, but to offer help. She attended parent-teacher conferences, advocated for me. I discovered solace in art. Miss Harriet noticed my constant doodling and bought me proper sketch pads. I spent hours drawing, expressing emotions I couldn't verbalize. She never gushed, but she hung my better pieces in the hallway, a quiet acknowledgement. By junior year, Miss Rivera and Miss Harriet encouraged college. It seemed impossible before. They helped me research scholarships for foster youth, guided me through essays. For the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a future beyond the system. Then, during my senior year, Miss Harriet was diagnosed with terminal cancer. 6 months, maybe less, she said at Sunday breakfast. "I've updated my will. You'll need a new placement." I was 17, less than a year from aging out. Another move, another adjustment, was exhausting. But more than that, I was facing the loss of the only adult who had consistently shown up for me in nearly a decade. She declined quickly. Within 3 months, she was in hospice. I was back in a temporary placement, with a couple who tried daily to convert me to their particular faith. I visited Miss Harriet every day after school, holding her hand, reading from her favorite books, until she passed. Her funeral was small but dignified, attended mainly by former foster kids whose lives she had touched. We were a motley crew, united by our time in her home. It was the first time since my family's abandonment that I felt genuine grief. 2 months later, I turned 18. I aged out. I had a high school diploma, acceptance to community college on scholarships, and $752 in savings from part-time jobs. No family to call, no home to return to, no safety net. With my meager savings, I secured a spot in a shared apartment with 3 other girls, all students in Chicago. The apartment was small, the neighborhood questionable, but it was the first space that felt truly mine. I enrolled in community college, working 2 jobs, morning shifts at a diner, evenings at a retail store. I averaged 5 hours of sleep a night, but the exhaustion felt purposeful, different from the bone-deep weariness of foster care. This tiredness came with paychecks, with credits accumulating toward a degree, with forward momentum. In my second semester, I took an art history class. The professor, Dr. Mason, noticed my drawings in the margins of my notes. He asked to see more. Reluctantly, I showed him my sketchbook, expecting polite encouragement. Instead, he was genuinely impressed. "You have a natural understanding of composition and light," he said. "Have you considered pursuing art seriously?" The thought had never crossed my mind. Art was my escape, my therapy, never a career. But Dr. Mason's interest sparked something. He connected me with the art department, helped me apply for a fine arts scholarship, mentored me through building a portfolio. By the end of my second year, I had a full scholarship to a state university. For the first time, I felt genuine pride. I had created opportunities for myself, despite starting with nothing. Moving into university housing, I met Zoe. She became my first real best friend since childhood. She was studying business, practical and ambitious, but with a creativity that complemented my artistic side. We'd stay up late talking about everything and nothing, the kind of easy friendship I'd observed others having but never experienced. "You never talk about your family," she noted one night, sharing a pizza in our dorm room. "Don't have one," I replied, the practiced casualness of years smoothing over the pain. Zoe didn't push, didn't offer empty sympathy. She just nodded and said, "Well, you can share mine for holidays if you want. My mom always cooks enough for an army anyway." That simple offer of inclusion meant more than she could ever know. For the next 3 years, I spent Thanksgivings and Christmases with Zoe's boisterous family, watching their easy affection, learning what healthy family dynamics looked like. It was both healing and painful, a glimpse of what I'd missed, but also what was possible. Junior year, I got a work-study position at the campus gallery. I discovered I had a talent not just for creating art, but for curating it, for understanding how pieces tell a story. I was drawn to the business side, fascinated by the intersection of art and commerce. That same year, I met James in an advanced painting class. He was thoughtful, patient, never pushing for more information than I was ready to give. Our relationship grew slowly, built on mutual respect. He was the first person I told the full story of my abandonment. 3 a.m., sitting on his apartment floor, words spilling out after years of careful containment. "I kept waiting for you to have trust issues," he said when I finished. I laughed through tears. "What do you think this is? I've known you for 8 months, and I'm just now telling you why I never talk about my childhood." He smiled, pushing my hair back. "Fair point. But you're here. You're letting me in. That takes incredible courage after what you've been through." James helped me see that my defensive walls, while necessary for survival, were also preventing me from fully experiencing life. With his encouragement, I started therapy through the university, finally addressing the trauma I'd carried alone for so long. Graduation was a bittersweet triumph. I walked across the stage with honors, to cheers from Zoe and James, but I felt the absence of family acutely. No beaming parents, no waving siblings. Even after all those years, there was still a hollow space where those connections should have been. After graduation, I leveraged my gallery experience into an assistant position at a small contemporary art space in Chicago. The pay was tiny, but it was a foot in the door. I shared an apartment with Zoe, who'd landed an entry-level marketing job and continued therapy. My career progressed. Within 2 years, I was associate curator, discovering new artists, conceptualizing exhibitions. The director recognized my eye for emerging talent, my ability to communicate with artists. But personal growth wasn't as straightforward. One day, walking down Michigan Avenue, I saw a man who resembled my father. Same build, same gait. The panic attack hit without warning, leaving me gasping for breath on a busy sidewalk. Disoriented, I was suddenly 8 years old again, watching him drive away with my brother. That incident sent me back to therapy with renewed commitment. I needed to address not just the abandonment, but its ongoing impact on my daily life, how it colored my relationships and self-perception. Healing wasn't a destination, It was a process. During this time, I cultivated a close circle of friends who became the family I chose. Besides Zoe, there was Marcus, a chef, Elena, a librarian, and David, a software developer. We created our own traditions, our own support systems, showing up for each other in ways my biological family never had. Weekend brunches, holiday gatherings, movie nights, impromptu dance parties. These rituals replaced the family traditions I'd lost, creating new memories to overlay the painful ones. After 3 years of saving every spare dollar, I opened my own small gallery. A former bookstore, in a neighborhood on the edge of gentrification. It was modest, but it was mine. I focused on local artists, especially those from disadvantaged backgrounds. The gallery exceeded my expectations. Critics praised my fresh eye. Artists sought me out. By 29, I had enough financial stability to buy my first condo, a one-bedroom in a converted warehouse, high ceilings perfect for art. The day I signed the mortgage papers, I sat alone in the empty space, keys in hand, and wept. Not from sadness, but from a profound realization. I had created security for myself. After years of temporary homes, I had tangible proof that I could provide what my parents had failed to give me. My relationship with Michael began during this period of stability. He was an architect who came to an opening, more interested in the building than the art, until I caught him studying a challenging installation with genuine curiosity. Unlike James, who helped me start healing but wanted more emotional openness than I could offer, Michael understood boundaries. Having lost his own mother young, he recognized the unique resilience that comes from early loss. "We're both building our lives from scratch," he observed on our third date. "There's something beautiful about that, creating exactly what you want, without the weight of expectations." For years, I'd conducted periodic searches for my family online. Noah's name, Sophie's, social media for my parents. These searches became less frequent as I built my own life. The desperate need to reconnect was replaced by curiosity, then by something approaching indifference. I made a conscious decision to stop searching, to focus on the present and future. I found peace in accepting that family could be chosen, that blood ties were only one type of connection. The people who showed up for my gallery openings, who helped me move, who remembered my birthday, who held me when old grief surfaced unexpectedly, these were my real family. They had earned that designation through consistent presence and care, not genetic obligation. By my early 30s, I had created a life that felt whole, meaningful. Successful gallery, owned home, loving friendships, our relationship built on respect. The abandoned 8-year-old was still part of me, but she no longer defined me. I had become someone she could be proud of. Someone who transformed abandonment into independence, rejection into self-reliance, loss into creativity. I thought I had made peace with my past. Then Noah found me on Facebook. And everything I thought I'd resolved came rushing back with devastating clarity. The message arrived on an ordinary Tuesday morning. I was in my office, coffee in hand, reviewing submissions. The notification pinged. I clicked it absently, expecting a client. Instead, I stared at a name I hadn't seen in 20 years, Noah Winters. The coffee cup slipped from my hand, shattering on the floor. Hot liquid splashed my ankles. I barely noticed. My entire focus narrowed to the small rectangle of text. "Goldie, it's Noah, your brother. I don't know if you remember me, but I've been looking for you for years. I just found your gallery website. Can we talk, please?" I stared for so long that my assistant came to check on me, concerned by the crash and subsequent silence. She helped clean up the coffee while I sat, immobile, unable to process this sudden intrusion of my past. It took 2 days to respond. 2 days of discussing it with my therapist, with Michael, with Zoe. 2 days of weighing potential benefits against the certain disruption. My response was brief. "I remember you. We can talk." Noah responded immediately with his phone number. When I called, his voice was deeper than I remembered, but with the same cadence, the same slight hesitation before important words. "I can't believe I found you," he said, emotion making his voice thick. "I've been searching on and off for years." "Why now?" I asked, the question burning in me. The story unfolded gradually over that call and several others. Noah was married, 2 kids, an engineer in Wisconsin. He'd searched sporadically, but with limited information, had gone nowhere. "Dad didn't want us to contact you at first," he explained. "Said it would be confusing, that clean breaks were better." By the time I was old enough to make my own decisions, I didn't know where to start. It was a recent family health scare that spurred him to renewed efforts, until he found my gallery website. "Sophie's been looking for you too," he added, dropping another bombshell. She never stopped talking about you, even when we were all supposed to pretend the past didn't happen. Piece by piece, I learned what happened to my family after they drove away. Dad's construction business eventually stabilized in Wisconsin, though he never achieved his dream success. He remarried briefly, but it ended when his drinking became problematic. He was single now in his early 60s, with developing health problems, living in Milwaukee. Mom stayed with Aunt Lisa for only a few months before moving to Ohio with Sophie. She remarried when Sophie was 10, a stable, kind man. She still worked as a nurse, now in management. According to Noah, she expressed regret, though she never concretely tried to find me. Sophie became an elementary school teacher. She'd been engaged twice, but never married, breaking off both relationships. She lived in Columbus, an hour from our mother, maintaining what Noah described as healthy boundaries. There's going to be a family reunion, Noah said during our fourth call. Dad's turning 60, and the health scare made everyone realize time isn't infinite. They all want you to come. They all want me to come? I repeated, the words foreign in my mouth. The same people who left me alone in an empty house when I was 8? Noah's discomfort was palpable. It was a terrible time for everyone, Goldie. Dad was barely functioning. Mom was having what we now know was a major depressive episode. They made horrible decisions, but they've changed. And you think that excuse is abandoning a child? Anger finally broke through the shock. No, of course not, he backpedaled. Nothing excuses that. But people can regret their worst mistakes, right? They want a chance to apologize, to try to make things right. I laughed, a harsh sound without humor. Make things right? I spent 10 years in the foster system, Noah. Do you have any idea what that was like? He didn't, of course. While I was moving from home to home with my belongings in garbage bags, he was living with our father, playing baseball, having a normal adolescence. I found myself in an uncomfortable position, a messenger between parts of my family who hadn't communicated directly in years. Noah spoke with Sophie regularly, but had limited contact with our parents. Sophie talked to our mother, but rarely engaged with our father. Everyone, it seemed, had complicated relationships with each other, but were united in their sudden desire to reconnect with me. Sophie called a week after Noah's initial contact. Her voice was both familiar and strange, the little girl's high pitch replaced by a woman's tones, but with the same emotional openness I remembered. I never forgot you, she said, crying within minutes. I had this picture of you from my 6th birthday. I kept it hidden because it made Mom sad, but I looked at it every night for years. Unlike Noah, who was pragmatic, Sophie swung between tearful nostalgia and enthusiastic plans for making up for lost time. She wanted immediate closeness, suggesting visits and shared holidays, as if 2 decades of separation could be bridged in a single leap. When I asked why she hadn't looked for me sooner, her answer revealed the family mythology they had created in my absence. I thought you were with Grandma and Grandpa, she admitted. That's what Mom told me when I was little. By the time I found out the truth in high school, no one seemed to know where you were. The reasons offered for my abandonment varied, depending on who was explaining. Noah cited financial strain and mental health struggles. Sophie mentioned poor decision-making during a crisis. Both acknowledged it was wrong, but framed it as a tragic mistake, rather than the deliberate choice it had been. I learned that our parents had told extended family I was living with an aunt, a fiction that preserved their image as caring parents who were simply overwhelmed. No one had questioned this narrative deeply enough to uncover the truth, that I had been left alone and subsequently entered state care. My friends were divided on how I should respond. Zoe was protective, suspicious of their motives, concerned about the emotional toll. They abandoned you once, she pointed out bluntly. What's to stop them from disappearing again? Michael was more measured, suggesting I proceed with caution, but remain open to healing on my terms. You don't owe them forgiveness, he said. But you might find some peace in hearing them out. My therapist helped me navigate the complex emotions. The anger I thought I'd processed years ago returned with fresh intensity. The grief over lost years felt raw again. And underneath it all, a small, persistent voice that belonged to the 8-year-old, still inside me. Why didn't they want me then? Why do they want me now? I agreed to meet Noah for coffee when he came to Chicago for a work conference. Seeing him in person was surreal, like looking at a funhouse mirror version of our father. His features familiar, yet altered by time. He had Dad's height and build, but carried himself differently, without the restless energy I remembered. His children called me Aunt Goldie during a video call he initiated at the coffee shop. The title felt foreign and painful. These children, who shared my blood, knew nothing about me, had only been told stories about an aunt existing primarily in their father's childhood memories. "Dad wants to talk to you," Noah said towards the end, his discomfort evident as he fidgeted with his coffee cup. "He's not well, Goldie. The doctors are talking about 6 months, maybe a year. He wants to make peace before." He trailed off, leaving the implication hanging. The request for forgiveness from a dying man should perhaps have moved me, but it only intensified my anger. Why was I expected to provide absolution on his timeline? Where had this desire for reconciliation been during the years when I needed a father? A package arrived at my gallery the following week. The return address showed my mother's name in Ohio, sending a jolt through me at the sight of her handwriting. Inside was a worn teddy bear I'd thought lost forever, my childhood companion, Howard. "I kept him safe for you. I should have kept you safe, too. I'm so sorry, Goldie. Please call when you're ready. Love, Mom." The presumption in that signature, claiming a relationship she had forfeited 2 decades earlier, made me set the note aside. But I kept Howard, placing him on a shelf in my bedroom, a tangible link to the child I had been. The formal invitation to the family reunion arrived next. An awkwardly worded card, requesting my presence at a lake house in Michigan, the same place we'd vacationed as an intact family. The location was clearly chosen for its sentimental value, but the memories it evoked for me were complicated, tainted by the knowledge of what came after. I stood at a crossroads, pulled between the family I had lost and the life I had built without them. They were asking me to step back into a role I had long outgrown, the youngest daughter, the baby sister, the missing piece in their family portrait. But I wasn't that person anymore. I had become someone else entirely in their absence, forged by experiences they knew nothing about and could never truly understand. The decision I made about whether to attend that reunion would define not just my relationship with my biological family moving forward, but my relationship with myself and the journey that had brought me to this point. After weeks of deliberation and intensive therapy, I made my decision. I would meet with my family, but not on their terms. Not at the lake house with its complicated memories. Not as part of a celebratory reunion, pretending 2 decades of abandonment could be erased with cake and nostalgic reminiscing. Instead, I proposed a dinner at a neutral location, a restaurant near my gallery, where I would feel on solid ground. I wrote detailed letters to each family member beforehand, explaining exactly what had happened to me after they left. Not the sanitized version they might have imagined, but the harsh reality of foster care, the Thompsons with their black garbage bags, Mrs. Williams with her cutting remarks, the Jacksons who used food as punishment. The constant relocations. The years of feeling unwanted and disposable. "I'm not writing this to hurt you," I explained in each letter, "but because if there's going to be any relationship moving forward, it needs to be based on truth, not comfortable fictions. You need to know who I became in your absence." Michael offered to accompany me, a buffer against whatever emotional storm might await. I appreciated his support, but declined. This was something I needed to face alone on my terms, with the strength I'd built over a lifetime of self-reliance. The evening of our meeting, I arrived early, selecting a table that gave me a clear view of the entrance. I watched as they arrived together, my estranged family, instantly recognizable despite the years. Dad, thinner, hair gray, moving carefully. Mom, her face lined but still beautiful, nervously adjusting her necklace. Noah hovering protectively near Dad's elbow. Sophie, eyes scanning the restaurant anxiously until they landed on me. The shock of seeing them together after 24 years was physical, a tightness in my chest that momentarily stole my breath. These people who shared my blood, who once formed the entirety of my world, were now strangers with familiar faces. I stood as they approached, accepting brief, awkward hugs from each. The physical contact, both alien and achingly familiar. "You look so beautiful," Mom said, tears already forming. "So grown up." "That tends to happen in 20 years, I replied, my voice steady despite the emotional turbulence. The initial conversation was strained, filled with safe topics. How was my gallery? Did I like Chicago? Was I seeing anyone? I answered politely, briefly, watching as they exchanged glances, clearly unsure how to navigate the massive gulf between us. Dad cleared his throat during a lull. "Goldie, we owe you an apology. What happened, what we did. There's no excuse for it." "But there were reasons," Mom interjected quickly. "We were in such a terrible place financially, emotionally. I was suffering from depression, though I didn't recognize it then. Your father was drinking too much. We thought we were making the best decision for everyone at the time." I looked at her steadily. What exactly was the best decision for me, Mom? Being left alone in an empty house at 8 years old. The table fell silent. Sophie looked down at her plate. Noah shifted uncomfortably. Dad's face flushed. It wasn't supposed to be like that, he finally said. I thought your mom was taking you. She thought you were coming with me. By the time we realized what had happened, you were already in the system, and we were told it would be complicated to get you back. Complicated? I repeated the word, tasting bitter. So, you decided not to try? Because it was complicated. I couldn't handle all 3 kids alone, Dad admitted, not meeting my eyes. I was barely managing with Noah. And Sophie needed me completely, Mom added. She was so young, so confused. I took a deep breath, centering myself. I understand that you both were struggling. I can even accept that you made decisions from a place of desperation. What I can't understand is why neither of you came back for me. Why you never called, never wrote, never tried to find out if I was okay. We did try, Mom insisted. We called the social worker a few times, but they said you were placed with a good family, that disrupting your new situation might cause more harm than good. I laughed, a humorless sound. A good family? Do you want to know how many good families I lived with? I then recounted my placements, naming each family, detailing what life had been like. I recited dates, locations, specific incidents that had burned themselves into my memory. July 15, 2002, the Thompsons decided to focus on their biological children, so I was moved to the Ramirez house with 5 other foster kids. March 3, 2004, Mrs. Williams told me I was too stupid to ever amount to anything because I got a B- on a math test. November 28, 2005, the Jacksons locked the refrigerator over Thanksgiving weekend because I ate too much. As I spoke, their faces changed from defensive justification to uncomfortable recognition of the reality I had lived. This wasn't the sanitized version of foster care from heartwarming movies. This was the system as it actually existed for many children, a series of temporary homes with adults who saw you as a source of income or an obligation, rarely as a child deserving of love and stability. I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty, I said when I'd finished. I'm telling you because this is who I am. These experiences shaped me. If you want to know me now, you need to understand what happened to me then. I then delivered my prepared statement about forgiveness and reconciliation. I can forgive what happened without pretending it didn't affect me. I can move forward without erasing the past. But any relationship we build has to acknowledge the reality of those 20 years, not just sweep them under the rug. I set clear boundaries. No instant family reunions. No pretending we could pick up where we left off. No expectation that I would seamlessly integrate into traditions I'd never been part of. Individual relationships might be possible, built slowly and with respect for who we all are now, not who we had been, or who you wished I was. I won't be attending the reunion at the lake house. That's too much, too soon, in a place that holds complicated memories for me. I'm open to getting to know each of you individually, on neutral ground, if that's something you want. But I need to be clear, I have a full life with people who have been there for me consistently. They're my family, too, and they will remain my priority. Their reactions varied. Dad became defensive, initially arguing they had suffered too, that they hadn't intended the consequences. Mom cried, repeating. She'd never stopped loving me, that she thought about me every day. Noah seemed relieved that everything was finally being spoken aloud after years of family secrets. Sophie listened intently, occasionally reaching towards me as if wanting physical connection, but respecting my space. After dinner, I left, my dignity intact. Not seeking their approval or absolution, but standing firmly in my truth. The frightened, abandoned child had become a woman who could face her past without being diminished by it. In the weeks that followed, I met Sophie for coffee, just the 2 of us. Without our parents present, she spoke more freely about her own struggles growing up with a mother who battled depression and a stepfather who, while kind, never fully understood their blended family. We began building a tentative relationship based on who we were now. When the family Christmas invitation came, I declined politely, suggesting we continue with smaller, more manageable interactions. I wasn't ready for holiday celebrations that would inevitably highlight the years of traditions I'd missed, the inside jokes I wouldn't understand, the family photographs that didn't include me. The experience prompted a new direction in my artwork. I created a series about abandonment and healing, abstract pieces that explored the journey from fragmentation to wholeness. The exhibition received critical acclaim, with reviewers noting the raw emotional honesty and powerful resilience evident in the work. I didn't explicitly share the personal story behind the art publicly, but those who knew me understood its significance. 6 months after our dinner, my father called. His health had deteriorated further. His tone was different, less defensive, more reflective. "I failed you," he said simply. "Not just when you were 8, but every day after that when I could have tried to find you and didn't. I can't change it, but I wanted you to know that I know it. I know what I did." It wasn't a dramatic reconciliation. It wasn't even really forgiveness in the traditional sense. But it was an acknowledgement of truth. And that, surprisingly, meant something. I've come to understand that forgiveness isn't about excusing what happened or pretending it didn't cause harm. It's about releasing yourself from the burden of anger, not for the benefit of those who hurt you, but for your own peace. I forgave my parents not because they deserved it, but because I deserved to be free from the weight of resentment. Family is a concept I've had to define for myself. It includes the people who share my DNA, with whom I'm building careful, bounded relationships. But it also encompasses the friends who showed up consistently, the mentors who believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself, the partner who understands my complex history without trying to fix or erase it. Family is who loves you, not just who shares your blood. The abandoned 8-year-old girl still lives within me. I honor her courage, her resilience, her determination to survive when it seemed the whole world had turned its back on her. But she is no longer defining me. She is a part of my story, not its entirety. In my gallery office, I have 2 photographs side by side. One is the picture Sophie kept all those years, showing a gap-toothed little girl with hopeful eyes. The other is a recent self-portrait, showing a woman with strength in her gaze and confidence in her stance. Both are me. Both are true. Both deserve to be seen. Have you ever had to rebuild your definition of family after loss or separation? Do you believe forgiveness is possible without forgetting? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for listening.